Welcome everyone to Talk Back. Today I have a wonderful guest, Sandra Laub, she wears many hats. She's an educator, she's a teacher, she's an English teacher, she's an author, she's a playwright, she's an actor, she's a producer. And for some number of years now, because it's very timely, she has been grappling with the issue of, as an American Jew, how do you feel about what's happening in Israel before October 7th, after October 7th? And she's written a play that was originated before October 7th. She's made some modifications, and it is of great interest to talk about these issues with Sandra. Let me just tell you before we get started with her that there is going to be a performance of her play called Picking Up Stones, An American Jew Wakes Up to a Nightmare, and it will be on June 1, Saturday, 3 p.m. at the All Souls Unitarian Universalist Congregation on J Street in New London. And you can buy the tickets in advance. I'll ask Sandra how you're going to do that. How do you buy the tickets in advance?
Thank you, Sheila, so much. That was a lovely introduction.
Well, it's great to see you.
It's great to see you again. It's good to be back. You can buy those tickets at Human Tix. If you want to Google it, we have posters up around town. But if you want to just Google Human Tix Picking Up Stones, you'll be able to see the website.
And you should do it in advance. You're not going to be able to get it at the door if you come down?
We think it's going to sell out, so get it in advance. Okay. That would be best.
All right. So tell us, as an American teacher, a Jew, an actor, playwright, why did you even start to work on this play that, again, as I said, originated even before October 7th?
It did. It originated 2 years ago. Like you, my family is Jewish. I'm Jewish. I have a Jewish upbringing. We celebrate, as American Jews, typically Reform or Conservative Jews celebrate, doing the holidays, going to temple every once in a while, doing the Shabbat dinners and lighting the candles, because my father's father was a kosher butcher, and so I have it in my soul.
It's your legacy.
It's my legacy. It's my family. And I also have relatives in Israel. I have cousins in Israel. And we went to visit Israel in 2014 during that little Gaza war to see those relatives, and for me to research when I was doing, and I still do, Golda's Balcony. And I was exposed to the life that Israelis live, which has to do with the sirens going off, and the shelters, and the always being ready in fight or flight mode, I suppose.
It's like it's an existential part of life.
It's an existential crisis, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. We were, and this is in my play, it was in my first play, it's in the rewritten play. We were invited, sirens were going off, and we were sitting in a cafe, drinking a beer, having dinner, whatever. The siren went off, and people would go en masse into shelter, wait a minute or two,
like
three,
it's breakfast
like
time.
It's breakfast, what else is new, and then go back and finish your meal. And I thought, that's exciting and scary and weird, and how do you get used to this? And my cousins were like, this is how we live.
Well, don't you think they have to do that? Because if they let the emotional toil go on, it would be unbearable.
Well,
so they
the
have
tragedy
to maintain
is, absolutely, they have to keep that outwards. I asked a cousin at one of the celebrations we were invited to, a bat mitzvah, a wedding. He says every so often we have to fight a war, a little war, an operation. And I was trying to wrap my head around it, and a way that is a war culture that I thought is having its effect on my family. I saw that my cousin got ill. I mean, she had colitis. She had digestive issues.
The body bears the burden.
The body bears the, exactly. Her son would sleep in the shelter on a mattress, not just when they had to go into the shelter, but all the time. So this kind of anxiety, and my love for my family, and my wanting to understand them and protect them and also celebrate what this amazing country has done in 76 years.
Given all the obstacles, it still is.
Given all the obstacles. And of course, the flip side to that war culture is the peace culture, is the Jewish values, which is tikkun olam, heal the world, pikuach nefesh, to save a life, overrides everything. Not just Jewish lives, all human life. That's what we're taught, and that's what we read, and that's what we learn, and that's what we study, and that's what we hold dear. And I thought, how do Israeli Jews hold these two parts of being Jewish together and stay strong and stay healthy?
But they have been a divided culture as well. You have the more fervent Netanyahu, Likud, Orthodox crowd,
the ultra-Orthodox,
who are not the so-called peaceniks, and you have a much more liberal, progressive cadre of Israelis who don't like Netanyahu, don't like his government, are not happy with the settlements, and would like to have peace. So it's not a monolithic society.
It's a divided society.
Our friends who are more on the liberal progressive side of Israel told us that there are no doves in Israel after October 7th. Did
it's
you
so
see
sad.
that too? Yeah, but
there are seeds. In fact, the proceeds to my play on the 1st will go to the Seeds of Peace, which is still an organization. And there are, I can't say there are many, but there are some organizations that are still devoted to peace between Palestinians and Israelis, training especially young people to live together, work together, study together, clean the beach together.
Well, on a people-to-people basis, you see that when you're in Israel.
Happen.
Palestinians, Arab, Israelis,
family-to-family
bake bread
basis.
together, eat together, work together. I'm very involved in Hadassah and the hospitals. Many of the doctors and the staff are Arabs, are international people.
Yeah.
Palestinians who are hurt get treated there as well as Jews and all nationalities, all cultures. So it's on that higher level. It's trying to find maybe the moderate cadres in
and the
both
tragedy,
sides.
in addition, on October 7th, was that those families and those kibbutz were the peaceniks. They were the couples who were meeting the Palestinians on the border, who needed the special cancer treatment, who needed the special hospitalization. They would take them to the hospital. They would wait until treatment was finished and then take them back. And those were the ones who were kidnapped and killed.
Right.
Vivian Silver, right? Women Wage Peace. She espoused a philosophy of just as we do, as mothers, as liberal, progressive Jews, not knowing really what it's like to live on those borders where you do feel so exposed and you do feel like every day. And now today there are more rockets landing from Hezbollah. So it's that terrible, terrible conundrum and paradox of wanting to live a peaceful, healthy life for your family, to do good for others, to practice the values, and yet security.
It's hard because you know, it goes back to pre-1948. They don't want us in their neighborhood. I mean, isn't that really what
from
it
day
goes
one
back to? And
Golda
it's so
said,
interesting. The United Nations has a refugee organization just for the Palestinians, but it's the only refugee organization in the world that does not resettle refugees, that allows them for the past 80 years to fester with the hope that they're coming back. In other words, instead of having a new paradigm, a new resettlement of those who were people get displaced by wars, right? And they resettle. The Palestinian refugees don't, and the other Arab countries don't help them and won't take them in.
What do you think it's about, though, Sheila? Do you think it's about land, or do you think it's about stories? Do you think it's about people who, I mean, you want to go back to Abraham and Sarah kicking Hagar out with Ishmael, right? The two sons of Abraham, sons of the Judaic tradition. And eventually, and I build the stones in my play, they built their father's tomb together at the end of Abraham's life Isaac and Ishmael come together. They put the last stone on the tomb. And Torah says they live as neighbors.
Well, I think, doesn't Israel want to live as neighbors with the other Arab nations around them? And the other Arab nations around Israel are all one by one over the years making peace. And I think one of the impetus on the part of Hamas was the fear that they were being outnumbered by the other Arab.
And God forbid Israel should be acknowledged as a legitimate nation state by Saudi Arabia, so Hamas took that chance to say no.
And while Israel is being castigated by the world opinion, it was Hamas that behaved as barbarism. There's a difference between barbarism and war, isn't there?
And gleeful barbarism.
Yes.
Gleeful, captured on their phones.
Yeah.
I address that, and I address in this new play some photos that I took off of the New York Times website that take you into the events of October 7th. You can go on, and it's like a 3D tour, and it's still harrowing. And I limit it, and I do name a series of events. You know, we saw those pictures, that woman whose sweatpants were bloodied and she's forced into the truck, the Holocaust survivor in the back seat of the golf cart, the little boy encircled by Palestinian kids spitting at him and harassing him. So we know that it happened. And unfortunately, as we know has happened with the Holocaust, people are starting to deny it, forget it.
Starting to forget it.
So it's a big part of my play.
And, the rape and the sexual assaults that have been weapons of war for centuries.
Exactly.
They are not being remembered as much as they should.
And I wish that the kids on campus who are being so vocal, and I understand it, I protested in my time, right? But they're not mentioning Hamas. Or if they're mentioning Hamas, it's a resistance movement.
Or Hamas was just, you hear this, maybe not justified, but what had happened in the past was the seeds of the necessity for them doing that.
Easily glossed over, and it's not so easily glossed over.
But it's also a matter of education. How many of these college kids do you think can recite the history? Could they even find Israel on a map? I mean, it's very small. Can they even find it
which
on a
river,
map?
which sea?
Do they know what happened in 1948?
Right.
Well,
that's the generational thing as well. I mean, you and I remember, look, I was in high school in '73. I had marched against the Vietnam War. I remember my cousin, Dory Laub, a very famous psychiatrist who specialized in trauma, interviewed many Holocaust survivors, went back to Israel to fight in the '73 war. Having played Golda Meir, I know all of that history because I studied how that happened, what mistakes were made. Again, 50 years, almost to the day, same military errors, same bad intelligence.
We still don't know, though, what happened on it. Do we know?
You and I were talking about that movie. We know about the human error. We know about the people who didn't pick up the phone or who did not pass along the intelligence. And the same breakdown apparently happened on October 7th. And there will be a tribunal
to decide. But that does tremendous harm, because one of the marks of Israeli, the IDF and Israeli intelligence is that they were number one in the world. Nothing gets past the Israeli intelligence. This is a failure that really
total failure.
Diminishes Israel in the eyes of the world as well as in the eyes of its own people. Right. But it's so interesting that right before October 7th, they were taking to the streets by the hundreds of thousands.
Every week for 10 months.
I know, and how important it was. And despite Netanyahu and what people say about him, he still allowed democracy to flow. That's democracy, right? People weren't
judicial reform took a back seat after October 7th. Of course, they turned on a dime. The pivot was incredible. And I cover this in the play, the very same protesters who were on the lines 24 hours earlier snapped to attention, conducted search and rescue in their family cars. We know these heroic stories of the heroes of October 7th who tried to save so many people because the army was caught with their pants down. Let's call it the way it was. And Netanyahu has to answer for it. So do the generals have to answer for it. The people are angry. They're traumatized.
But he's still in power until this war is over, whatever that means.
Is that why it's taking so long? Is that why the hostages aren't back?
Yeah.
I mean, you see, I have
and
my...
I heard today, it's May 17th, Friday, May 17th. I heard on the radio today the Israelis found 3 hostages.
Yeah, from the Nova Festival. Yeah, the bodies.
So let's just go back a little bit. Tell us something about your background. How did you get to be a playwright and an actor?
Well, I've always been interested in theater. I've always been interested in the spoken word, and I majored at Northwestern in oral interpretation. I had fantastic teachers, and they taught me that you could do many voices, that there could be a narrator. I mean, we used to sing a play with many actors, right? So I'm a one-woman show. I play the 21 plus voices, and I try to do it as best I can by relating to the audience and by choosing a focus, you know. And I was taught how to do that at conservatory. I went to American Conservatory Theater in Northwestern before that.
After Northwestern?
After Northwestern, I went to the ACT to study acting. And then I taught theater and acting, voice and movement at Brown and at URI. So I have, and I worked off Broadway for a while. We lived in New York City, remember, until we moved to Connecticut 27 years ago. And that's in the play, too, to a place where there weren't as many Jews. And we had to find the Jews. So as a writer, you know, you're always taught to write what you know. And you have to be impassioned about the work that you do. And, you know, lately, because I have been teaching high school for 21 years, I only had so much time, so I've kind of specialized in either the one-woman show, like Golda's Balcony, or the two-hander, like the play that I wrote that I toured about George Bernard Shaw and Mrs. Campbell, the actress. Did that for a while, still do it. And now, because I felt in my soul, like you say, what is it, the nefesh, the soul, that something terrible was happening in Israel, and I love Israel, and I love it as the home for Jews, but something awful was happening with 16, 17 years of Bibi's occupation. And I was reading and got oriented towards the Palestinian plight. And no one in my synagogue really wanted to talk about it or notice it or see it or pay attention to it.
It's hard. We've had such poor leadership over the years, too.
Very poor leadership, but again, there was such violence. And so, you know, after the Second Intifada and all of that horror, the peace movement went underground, you know, and Likud took over.
There was so much hope with I remember the Oslo
There was
Accords,
so much hope with Clinton and the Oslo. And Ehud Barak, and Rabin, of course, who was assassinated. So I feel that peace is the only way, that you cannot live two peoples who are not going anywhere. You cannot live side by side, however much they want to buffer the border. And sure, they'll beef up the security. The security is, I mean, that was a terrible error, right? Even the cameras broke on October 7th. Stupid parachutists able to infiltrate. So yes, there has to be security, but there has to be a rapprochement of some kind of, and it has to be leadership.
But some
and it's not going to be Bibi.
So long as there's a ceasefire tomorrow and Hamas continues in existence,
right,
the same thing will happen in the future.
But look at how Hamas was built up. Who built up Hamas?
Well,
Who allowed Hamas
that is true.
To continue and to burgeon?
And
Bibi set it up. So if those, and we're leaving your question to me, which is my background, but I'm old now.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, that's an old story. That's an old story. That's what I talked about last time I was here. But, you know, we've got to move forward, and we've got to change leadership, in Israel. And of course, I don't have a vote there. Who am I to say? All I can do is speak as an American Jew. And that's why my title, because I did wake up to a nightmare on October 8th, the morning of October 8th.
So let's go back to when you first started to write this play.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. It was before October 7th. How did you come up with the title, Picking Up Stones? What does that mean?
An American Jew's Moral Dilemma was the sort of title. And I thought about something physical. You know, actors need, theater needs, most of the time you need something physical in the space to relate to. And I'm a stone picker-upper. I walk the beach and I pick up shells and I pick up stones. I just do that naturally. And they do line the ledges in my house. And I like to pick them up as souvenirs. And I also do like to put them, you know, that's what we do when we visit our parents' gravestones. We put the stones on top. And you can either pick up a stone in violence, as Palestinian children do when they throw stones at Israeli flags, or you can build with stones. So I thought picking up stones to me is a personal metaphor for the choice that people have. Mm-hmm. They can either build or they can tear down. And I put it in Golda Meir's voice. So I talked to Golda in my play. And she and I have a little back and forth. And it's kind of cool because I get to talk to Golda like Sandy. And I actually do speak to Faisal Sella. Last time I was here, he was on as well. Because that iteration of the play, pre-October 7th, was about how I felt about an unfair, an unjust, un-Jewish way that Israel was behaving towards their neighbors, the Palestinians. The documentary films that I saw watching on Faisal's webinar were awful. What the settlers have been doing for years, and you saw that article in the New York Times. It's terrible, and it belies the soul of a Jewish person who is supposed to heal the world, not tear it down. So that's where the germ of the idea started. That I saw. I'm reading and I'm watching and I'm viewing, and in May of 2022, the beloved Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was killed.
And eventually Israel admitted that they were responsible.
It was a mistake. But how many mistakes? I found out during the Gaza war of 2014, that little war where Marty and I were walking on the Tel Aviv beach, and it was the World Cup and blasting from all the bars on the beach. Well, 9 little boys on a Gaza beach were blasted by Israeli forces, misidentified. Look, it's terrible. War takes collateral damage. It takes friendly fire just took how many Israeli soldiers?
Right.
It's a horrible, horrible truism of war. And as a mother, as someone who never would want a mother to suffer the death of her child, whether it's Palestinian, Gazan, Israeli, there's got to be a way towards
all
peace.
that of powerful human reflections of the dangers and the mistakes and the horror of war, but from the geopolitical feeling, and as a Jew, understanding anti-Semitism throughout history, and understanding a little bit about human nature, a lot of us are very pessimistic that as a Jew we will ever be able to flourish in any society, anywhere in the world where we can truly be safe.
In every age.
Isn't that a feeling that many Jews are feeling? As a New Yorker, born and bred in New York City, I told my grandmother for the first time traveling to New York City on the Metro North train to Grand Central, Carly, for the first time in my life as a New Yorker, I am afraid to be a Jew in my own city.
And to show your Star of David, for guys to wear their kippah.
Yeah.
I know.
So that's, I think, a lot of American Jews, and maybe Jews around the world, are feeling that. So how how do we escape that? How do we overcome it? I don't know. when I was in the Metropolitan Opera on October 7th, and at the intermission, everyone in the theater saw what was happening in Israel on their phones. We're all looking. My friend, who was not Jewish, said to me, Sheila, why does the world hate the Jewish people so much? And I said to her in that moment, I think it's our destiny.
You know, Sheila, I had an encountering survivor, child of a survivor, into my high school class just last week, part of the Federation program that I do every year. And one of the kids asked exactly that same question of the survivor. Why does the world hate Jews? And the man got a tear in his eye. He took a breath and he said, you know, that is the question of the millennia. And he referred to Albert Einstein, who had a metaphor, a story that he told about a strong horse and a weak horse.
In time.
Yeah, he escaped Germany in time, but it had something to do with power and leadership, manipulating the people, the populace, to look at something that they want to be or that they want or what they don't think that they have yet, and to look and say, here are the people who have it. Take it from them or hate them. And I think Jews in every millennia, because we have been the people apart, the people alone, easily pointed to as take it from them or be jealous of them or be, you know, don't emulate them somehow. There's a rancorousness, there's that scapegoat feeling. It was Joe Bieber who came to class. He said his family's Holocaust escape story was just harrowing. And of course, they survived because they, first of all, had a dozen near misses, near escapes where they could have died. But their family was learned, was educated, and did the accounts and did the books for many of the non-Jewish, I guess for them it was Hungarian, Polish, you know, where the borders were mushed. And so the people were jealous, and some of them betrayed the family because they were learned and they knew the numbers, they knew how to read. But on the other hand, some of them remembered how the Jewish family was kind to them, or did something for them, or did them a favor, or forgave them their what they owed them, their debt, and hid them and did not betray them. So that's human nature, isn't it? Are you gonna protect? Are you going to betray? Are you going to choose what may be the more difficult path, which is, you know, do the right thing because it's a fellow human being, or do the thing that's quick and dirty and easy and gives you for the moment either the advantage or the piece of bread.
Right.
He told the story, just one more thing. Once they were liberated, his father and his mother were liberated in Munich. They went to Munich from the DP camp, and they were starving. They were half their weight from the camps, and they were given bread by the American GIs. And what did they do? Mr. Bieber's father gave both loaves of bread to the starving German children on the street. And he's telling the story with a tear in his eye.
Yeah.
That's a Jew.
Well, my grandmother always said to me, you give when you have the least. That's when you donate. But I think, you know, you point out, I think, I don't know if it's a dilemma that we have as Jews. We want to feel that we are elevating our humanity by wanting peace. But it's hard.
It's the hardest work of
all. We want to not behave the way the rest of the world is behaving. We want to be peaceful. We want to enjoy other cultures. We want to share. But again, in Israel, so many feel that we've tried. We've tried. It doesn't work. They keep coming after us. I think that's the sense. And so we're betraying, as you feel, betraying our own important human values that we want to elevate, but it's hard.
It's a terrible conundrum. It's a terrible paradox. And what will happen in Gaza? What will be the day after? Will it be a parking lot that the right-wing settlers can come in and buy real estate?
Well, we don't know.
Or will it be a buffer zone? Or will it be run by a coalition of Arab nations?
It's got to be some international coalition to run, probably is
There
gonna
will
happen.
be a day after, but at the moment Israel is terribly traumatized, and I wish there was different leadership, and I hope that there are coalitions building now that can somehow, first of all, get the hostages back, defeat Hamas in whatever way that we can. And
Well, that's the question.
and
again,
restore the
we're
refugees.
not war technicians, so we don't know.
We don't know the
what's
strategy,
What's
exactly.
the best strategy to defeat Hamas?
And 200,000 internal refugees in the country that can't go back, that aren't back yet to the Gaza Strip, kibbutzim, and to the northern outposts. 200,000 in a small state.
So, how many performances did you do of the play originally before October 7th?
The original play, we did a workshop at the Dragon's Egg in Connecticut. Then we did another workshop at Palestine Museum, US. Then we did, then I was slated to play Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Peacedale, Rhode Island. In July, I was ready to do that, and then October 7th hit, and I rewrote the play. So from October 7th to when I performed it last, it really transformed,
So
and
how
I
much,
rewrote
How
it.
much did the play change?
A lot. It's all me now. It's all about my experience.
So you're not using other voices like
I'm not,
you did before?
I'm using other voices, but the previous play did use a little bit of Via Dolorosa, which was David Hare's version of when he went to Israel in 1996. This is all me, about when I went to Israel in 2014, how I experienced October 7th, how I experienced my cousins, talking to them back and forth pre-October 7th, post-October 7th. So it's wholly mine now, and it is about where is the hope? Where is the hope? And at the end, I'm building my stones. I'm building voice by voice. And it is, I have to say, Sheila, it's the mothers, it's the women, it's the voices of women, women wage peace, women who are, wives and daughters and of combatants for peace. And of course, there are many more Israeli females in the army now.
Yeah.
So what happens when women wage war and peace? When women try to, build a bridge? So I've got my ear out for, new music, and I don't know whether you listen to any of the other Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day ceremonies that were apart from, they were the sort of bridge building ceremonies, and they were really beautiful. And they featured women singing songs, prayer for mothers. So I tried to leave the audience with some hope and some real thoughts about, how in your own life are you dealing with the paradoxes and the dilemmas in your own life that can go one way towards
Right.
war and one way towards
Do you feel,
towards peace.
as a Jew over the years, you have seen a waning of the devotion to or interest in Israel on the part of other American Jews, especially young people?
It's confusing for young people because young people didn't live through that. They don't know so much about Golda. They don't know about those pickaxe Zionists who are idealistic.
Why
aren't we teaching them? Exactly. That those boatloads of Holocaust survivors that were turned away, the story of Golda making sure that it was the children of those survivors, those DP camp survivors in '48 who were able to come to Israel. She negotiated that. She was a one-woman, brilliant negotiator. She brought them over. And it was idealistic. And yes, we did push Palestinians out, and we thought that they'd be able to live with, hey, let's share. And I think from the Palestinian viewpoint, they said the 500,000, 700,000, how many were there? look, this is our home. You're coming into our home. And we thought, we need a home too.
Yeah, well,
And this has been our home for 2,000
David
years.
Ben-Gurion and the other Eastern European Jews who were the Israeli founders wanted a lot more territory, but they said the United Nations partition said this is what we're willing to do.
That's
and
right.
I'll
And
take
we
it.
agreed.
I'll take it.
The Jews agreed, and the Arabs did
and
not.
how many young people realized the very next day all the Arab nations?
Day one, 5 Arab nations.
How many young people know that?
They don't know it, Sheila. They don't know the
know.
history. And they, look, I wish I could take this to college campuses. I wish I could take this play to Hillels. I wish I could take this play as an olive branch to learn how to speak civilly rather than what happened at UCLA, which was terrible, right? The violence at the encampments. But there was also peaceful learning going on in many of the encampments that I think have been taken down.
Not that the violence didn't occur, but I think we over-exaggerate.
I think so, too.
There were just as many peaceful demonstrations and teach-ins.
There were
and other
seders
things.
going on in some of the encampments, but I think it's education. I think it's better Holocaust education, because it's true, with every generation that passes, we're losing those eyewitness accounts of Holocaust. Child of survivor are getting older as well. We've got to pass those stories down to classrooms like mine. So those are programs that Hadassah, I know, supports and that I support. But it's, they see an oppressed people and they think those are the people who are right. And they see an oppressor that they want to say, oh, you're the oppressor. And they look at Israel and they say, you're wrong. And they don't understand the nuance and they don't understand the complexity or the history. And that's what my play...
Well, some students may, but it seems like the majority of the students are just following the leader, and it's the thing to do. And the Palestinians are considered the underdogs in this situation. It's complicated, and we need education.
And my play is trying to do that as well, with all of those voices.
So have you thought of bringing it to young people on a campus or even a high school?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, my one-man band here with my marketing to, Hillels, college campuses, even high school, Hebrew high schools I would bring it to. Look, they have yet to see Golda's Balcony, everybody that needs to see it. I would love to do this as a 1-2, see the Golda's Balcony and then see how she brings that historical figure of Golda into this new world where Golda is defending why Israel is here and why we need to stay here, and why when you say from the river to the sea, it means that you don't think Israel should be there as a state. And that's not right either. So book me.
Okay, well, we've got a few slides we want to take a look at. Studio, can you show some of the slides that Sandra brought with her today? All right, why don't you tell us about that, Sandra?
Well, this is a friend slide of kibbutz that was devastated on October 7th. And you see the pathos there is the teeter-totter in the foreground. So the destruction, the utter destruction, the burning and the shooting and the murder and mayhem that happened on October 7th. And there are plenty of pictures that show the utter destruction of what Hamas did when it broke through the fences that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
of course, this is the other side. This is full of pathos, this picture. A Palestinian mother in Gaza. And, how many thousands and thousands of broken bodies are under the rubble. So I try to understand what she feels like. And I try to play her voice as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is a beautiful...
And this is a serendipitous picture that an audience member took of the way my stones looked at the end of the last performance I did at the Canton Unitarian Universalist parish in Canton, Mass. And you can see, look at those two stones. Now, there's the Palestinian representation, and there's the Israeli representation. And I'm sure that people have feelings when they look at that Palestinian flag being represented on a stone. And I'm sure people have feelings about the Israeli flag represented on the stone. And serendipitously, that heart,
The heart in
was
between.
just a stone
Yeah.
I picked up in my trip to Sedona, Arizona a couple of years ago. And each one of those stones for me represents something quite unique and individual because I picked it up at a certain place in time. Yeah.
Beautiful.
This is an incredible artist. Susan Clinard is, I believe she lives in New Haven, and she's a Facebook friend. She's an incredible artist of empowerment to people who have been oppressed. She does sculptures, African Americans. She did this sculpture. Her story, I think, is that the dream that created this picture, mother protecting her children during war, came to her like 20 years ago. And I think that face is her. I think it's a universal mother. And if you actually check on her site, Susan Clinard, you'll see that the full length of this sculpture is many children within her cloak that she's protecting.
Nice.
So in addition to Mother Courage from Bertolt Brecht, which begins my play, she's featured as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other slides we have? Is that it?
Maybe just
That's
the,
it? Yes.
that might be
Okay.
it. Okay.
All right. Well, I think that's very, very moving, and everything you've told us about your play is moving. Just as a final summary, Sandra, what do you want the audience to come away with when they watch your play?
I would like my play to soften their hearts and their minds. If they came in thinking, I'm on one side of this issue, maybe they'll open to not another side, but another layer. There are many, many layers and many stories. And any one of those stories can get us to peace. That's how we must live. That's how we must live eventually. And I think the human spark is meant to aspire to that eventually. I don't know how long it'll take, but
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
So you can go to Human Ticks Picking Up Stones for the for tickets
Okay.
online.
And June 1st at the All Souls Universalist Unitarian Church in New London.
Yep.
On J Street. And good luck with that. And hopefully we'll see you at other performances. And there will be a talk back
Oh yes, there's
after
a
the
facilitated
performance,
talk
which
back
is very important.
afterwards.
That'll
yes.
be great and
Absolutely.
very enlightening. I hope it will be.
It's a beautiful space to perform at. Reverend Carolyn Paterno will be facilitating that discussion,
All right.
and it will be beautiful.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sandra. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for watching on Talkback. See you
Thank you.
next time. Bye. Good.
Good.